braving the storm. We waited a couple extra minutes since the location was changed. I'm sorry about that. It was a last minute scheduling conflict with the school. But thank you for finding your way up to the auditorium to be here tonight. And I just want to introduce myself. I am Shelley McLeod. I'm the Vice Chair of Neighbors United for Progress. And our organization was formed in part to boost public awareness about matters of importance in our community. And right now, one of those matters is bringing our wastewater treatment plant into compliance. So I want to thank you all for caring enough to be here and take the time to learn more about that, what's been done and what we can do from here on out. I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening, Mr. Jeff McCann. Jeff moved to Dayton in 2003 with his wife, Ann, who passed away 2 years ago. After his 22-year military career, Jeff and Ann couldn't move anywhere, but they chose Dayton because Ann fell in love with our town. Jeff's been a teacher at Dayton Middle School for the last 15 years, and he's graciously agreed to be our facilitator tonight. Jeff?
Thank you. As many of you remember Greg George, a former mayor. I was approached by this because for years he had been talking about a waste treatment plant. And just like a lot of people, I just do work, do what I do. And I was told, hey, they were put together a meeting and they needed somebody to moderate it. I said, well, I know how some of the equipment works because I work here, so I'll help you guys out. Because this is an informational meeting. Informational meeting that we want to stay within the scope. Okay, these are all the people that help put the plan that they have in place right now. And I think it's important that we as citizens kind of know what's happening within our own system, because the water treatment plant is kind of important. Some of the things that make a town viable, obviously police, fire, schools, hospitals, but also where we send our stuff is also just as important. So hopefully everybody had a chance to get one of these little, I guess they're kind of hard cards. If you get one, as some of the people up here, as they're talking, or as you think of questions to ask, hopefully you had an opportunity, excuse me, hopefully you had an opportunity to look at this, because this is basically a timeline of what's happened so far. And also on the back, I think it's a little more of a, it's more in a paragraph form of where we are. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start with, because I don't want to butcher anybody's name, even though I teach English, I don't actually use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let all the people up here introduce who they are.
Hi, my name is Stephen Lockwood. I'm a project manager with Washington Water Trust. Water Trust is a non-regulatory, nonprofit organization in the state. We've been around since 1998. And we work with landowners, willing water right holders, cities, communities to find cooperative partnerships that can help restore the streams and the tributaries so that Chinook and salmon and steelhead can have a better chance of recovery.
Good evening. I'm Anton Kiono. I work for the Confederated Tribes in the Umatilla Indian Reservation in the Department of Natural Resources. There are many tribal members and staff members who live in and around this area, so this community is very important to the Confederated Tribes, as well as its natural resources and its fisheries. So we're very interested in both the community and the water issues here today.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Fuller. I work for the Department of Commerce in a program called Small Communities Initiative. We work with very small and economically distressed cities and towns to help them with technical issues, regulatory issues, help them work with the regulatory community for water, wastewater, and other infrastructure projects. Dayton is one of my assigned communities, so I've been helping them with their wastewater project. And I will just add that I was pretty new to commerce. I was formerly with Ecology, where I was there 23 years. So I've been working with Dayton a long time.
Good evening. My name is Lucy Peterschmidt. I work for the State Department of Ecology. I'm one of the program managers of the Water Quality Program. We cover 13 counties.
Zach Weatherford, the mayor of Dayton. I've been the mayor since the middle of 2019. I was formerly a council member since the beginning of 2016. So this is a project that I've been involved in for a great number of years and even more involved in since I assumed my role as mayor. It's been a struggle. It's been a learning curve. I learn every day, and I'm really appreciative that we're all gathered here tonight so that everybody can hopefully get their answers or their questions answered and get some more information about what's going on in our community.
Good evening. I'm Linda Herbert, and I am chair of the board of Blue Mountain Land Trust. And we work to preserve and protect all the qualities that we value so highly, the natural, scenic, and working lands in the Blue Mountain region. And our service area encompasses the entire 400-mile range of the Blue Mountains. We have 11 counties. And our mission is actually threefold, conservation being our primary and foremost, but also recreation and education. Because we know if we get you out there enjoying the land, learning about the land, you will support our conservation efforts. And many of you probably have heard of the Blues Crew. That is our major recreation arm. And we do trails.
Yes,
We were here 2 weekends ago, I believe it was, to help renovate your local trail, Rock Point Trail. Blue Mountain Land Trust holds the conservation easement on the Martin property.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. I wish I could have been there in person. I'm not feeling super great today, but I'm glad to be a part of the panel and hopefully answer questions and participate as much as I'm able. And I'm the project manager for Anderson Perry. I've been involved in this project almost as long as Cynthia has.
Good evening. Thanks everyone for coming out in this lovely June or spring weather, hail and lightning and thunder. It's a really nice drive down though. It's really pretty. So my name is Cynthia Wolfuller. Like I said, I work for the Department of Commerce in the Small Communities Initiative Program. Just very briefly, the program was formed back in the 90s at the request of the governor to assist small communities with wastewater, water, any kind of infrastructure projects or problems. We try to help keep people in compliance or help them get back into compliance, get funding, whatever you need to do. I've written CEPAs, I've worked on small water system management plans. So just kind of technical resource for both the cities and towns and the citizens of the cities and towns. And and with me is Lucy Peter Schmidt from Ecology. We work very closely together. We worked on Dayton on this wastewater treatment plant upgrade since 2007 together. So we've been, plugging along for a while. So our roles and responsibilities, like I said, I'm a technical assistance resource. I can be a meeting facilitator. I help elected officials, citizens, anybody who has questions or or wants to know more about a project or just learn. And I help towns develop implementation plans or action plans to move forward and help keep them in compliance with what seems like a lot of regulations these days. My position is funded by the Departments of Commerce, Health, and Ecology. So that's how I'm able to assist with a multitude of projects. Okay, so Lucy's a permit manager with the Eastern Regional Office and the Water Quality Program at Department of Ecology. So Eastern Region Office manages wastewater permit discharge permits in 13 counties. They permit managers write permits, do field inspections, also provide technical assistance. Lucy provides engineering reviews, and she's also the facility engineer. And also these permit managers monitor monthly compliance with the permits by meeting with the enforcement team every month, looking at the progress or the way the plants being managed and operated and whether they're in compliance. So our goal tonight is to provide information to summarize the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project, and some of the background, the involvement with the state, and then to answer questions. And I know there's a lot, so. And the most important thing is to let the city and the citizens know that we are here to support Dayton in helping them meet their regulatory requirements as soon as possible. So our goal is to get the city, keep them in compliance, help them meet the regulations, keep them safe from any kind of compliance action or citizen lawsuit or anything like that. So that's what we're here for. So the first question I'm sure many people want to know is, why do we need to upgrade the wastewater plant? The Federal Clean Water Act through the EPA requires states to assess surface water quality in water bodies, rivers, streams, and then develop a plan for how to make sure that water bodies that do not meet the standards, that there's the develop a plan so that they can meet the state standards and clean water that are set forth in the Clean Water Act. So Ecology did a study on the Walla Walla watershed, which included the Touchy River, and they found that the Touchy didn't meet water quality standards during what they call the critical period, so the low flow summer months. The critical period in this case is designated as May through October. So they identified specific pollutants in the water body that were needed to be removed to improve water quality. And then they published an implementation plan in 2008, giving everybody that discharges to the Touchy some sort of an allocation for those pollutants. So a little slice of the pie, what they had to remove to get the river to be cleaner. So Dayton's existing treatment plant can't meet these limits, therefore must be upgraded. So like I said, we've been working since 2007. That was the first meeting with the city officials. Ecology came to Dayton, and then Dayton came to Ecology to talk about this implementation plan that was going to be published and how to meet the requirements in it. So it's been going on a while. We've looked at a lot of different things. So it's really challenging. The pollutant limits are very low. And the existing treatment technology that's out there in the wastewater world just really can't meet the discharge, reasonably meet the limits that are required for the Dayton to continue discharging to the river in the summer. So Dayton self-funded and prepared with the help of Anderson Perry what we call a facilities plan. It's an engineering document that looked at different alternatives, looked at cost, viability, compliance with the laws of the state and the feds, and then identified what we call the preferred alternative or the best alternative. At the time, that was a land treatment system. Land treatment is irrigation of some sort of a non-food crop during the summer months with highly treated wastewater. So that plan came to Ecology and was reviewed and approved in 2017 for a upgrade to the treatment plant, and then the addition of this land treatment piece. So the land treatment piece would remove the discharge during the critical season summer months from the Touchy River and divert it over to a non-food crop for irrigation. That was the intent of that alternative. So there were 6 or 7, I think, potential properties identified that could be suitable. A fairly large area is needed for land treatment based on agronomic rates, public health setback, and some other things. They needed about 160 acres of land. So looked at some big parcels. A lot of it was, some of the problems were topography. So Dayton's come down in a bowl. The suitable farmland was up high, wasn't very level, was far away, had to pump it a long ways. expensive to pump it a long ways, to land treatment itself can be expensive. There are a lot of regulatory submittal requirements every year. And just basically that the biggest obstacle was finding property, suitable property that was for sale, that somebody wanted to sell, and so that the city could grow a crop to treat the wastewater. So that really was the obstacle. Is there was the intent to do this land treatment, but there was just no land for sale. So that was a pretty big problem. So while we were all working on trying to find land, the city was approached by Washington Water Trust, and they wanted to talk about an option that would keep the water in the Touchy River during the summer months to keep the flow going, and still meet the regulatory requirements that are set forth by the Department of Ecology. So Water Trust reached out to the Umatilla tribe, who also has a vested interest in keeping water in the Touchy during the summer for fish and other, water quality benefits. And so in May of 2019, we had our first meeting here in Dayton. It was Anderson Perry, Ecology, the tribe, Water Trust, big group, some wetlands expert from Anderson Perry from out of Oregon. And we all talked about what kind of alternative might work that would keep the water in the river in the summer and still meet the plan requirements. So that's how that group got started. So the original proposal that came out of a series of meetings was to put in a treatment plant, a new treatment plant that would highly treat the wastewater, so it'd be pretty clean coming out of there already, clean enough to meet any kind of water quality standards. And then from there, put it into a constructed wetland alongside of the river that would treat it further through plants and groundwater, so treat for temperature and nutrients and those kinds of things. But it would still be hydraulically connected, so the water would still return to the Touchy River through the ground. And so there was kind of a conceptual design. You may have seen it floating around. It's not anything that's written in stone, but kind of over iterations, a design kind of appeared that could work, that would address because it's near a flood zone, because it's near the river, that would address keeping it out of the flood zone, that would do some riparian restoration. I don't know if you've been down there, but there's parts of the riverbank that are pretty degraded, and so with plants and trees and plants and other things that would repair the riparian banks on the river. And then it would be an aesthetically pleasing wetland design, low impact. It would have some additional cultural and community impacts, maybe some walking trails. Certainly there's cultural significance because this is where the tribe has made their home for many years. And then a cost savings with reduced land area needed, acreage needed, and then low cost operation and maintenance, so not as many moving parts. So like I said, we started meeting, we meet monthly. The group has gotten exponentially larger as people get more interested. Anybody's invited. We started talking about this wetlands concept, which has been used successfully in another state in Oregon, similar type of situation. The tribe generously funded a feasibility study, so that identified potential properties that might meet the criteria for siting a wetland and still have it on the riverside of the highway. Ecology staff presented the proposal and to all the internal programs, water resources, water quality, the shorelines program, the executive leadership team, the program management team, to get the buy-in and the support to move forward to design and construction of this alternative. So Dayton, as a result, moved forward with trying to acquire 2 properties that were identified as not perfect, but suitable. and one of them was coming up for sale, so that seemed ideal. And then the neighboring property, expressed a willingness to sell to the city to have enough acreage to make this project happen. So Dayton invested in a lot of evaluation, a lot of due diligence, looking at suitability, soil suitability, wetlands criteria, the biology, the cultural resource survey, some geotechnical work, monitoring wells, and so and then the easement agreement, so negotiations with the Blue Mountain Land Trust about whether the easement could be modified to put this wetland concept into what was currently a conservation easement. So a lot of back work fact checking to see if these properties would indeed be worth purchasing to move forward with the project. So that the city currently has a low interest loan from Department of Ecology that they applied for originally to do the design of the land treatment system that was selected in the facility plan. It's a $990,000 loan. It's at 2% interest, and at the end of the life of the loan, half of it gets forgiven. So the payback for the city is about $495,000. The city's only requested a little over 10,000 to date, half of that which will be forgiven. So they've mostly self-funded all these evaluations and due diligence work. Land is expensive, and when a city needs to acquire land to meet a regulatory requirement, it gets a lot more expensive all of a sudden. So this ecology offered to increase the design loan funds to give the city a low interest loan that would allow them to purchase the land necessary for the project. That's pretty uncommon. Usually ecology the city will have to take out some sort of a bridge loan or bank loan, build the project, and then can get reimbursed for the land costs when the project is complete. But the ecology leadership was really excited about this project. There's a lot of support for it, so they put themselves in this unusual position of offering the money up front to buy the land before the project was even designed. So that offer was on the table. The current expiration date on this loan is December 31st, 2022. The loan's almost 4 years old. The city can request an extension of time to April 30th, 2023, just not very long. There is an option to request a 6-year extension to April 30th, 2024, which might get you there, but the WAC doesn't allow anything past 6 years. So the money is kind of on, for lack of a better word, borrowed time. So recent events, the council met and discussed twice and decided against purchasing the properties for sale that had been evaluated. Dayton has, the council and others have been discussing other alternatives besides the wetland option and then the original preferred land treatment option. These are things that are usually part of the planning process, which the city has already gone through. Ecology recently sent a letter to the city asking for clarification on if Dayton wishes to explore the alternatives that aren't already in the plan or the wetlands option. The city will need to prepare and submit an updated facilities plan that looks at these additional options that are being put out, speculated on, put out and asked about. So, and then the city will have to submit a formal request for a time extension for meeting the implementation plan requirements. So we're here tonight to answer questions, talk about concerns. This is our contact information, both mine and Lucy's. Had quite a few people reach out to me to ask questions. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody's, turning over the rocks, looking at different options and alternatives. and bringing them forth and everybody's been really good about and really helpful about that. So I think there's a lot of interest in it, and we'll do the best we can to answer questions, and we really want to help the community succeed with this project.
Thank you.
First question I have is, why can't we use the reclaimed water option, and what is that? Just take just a second. Bring it up a little higher.
Okay. We kind of anticipated this question. It's something that's been in the past. And so we have a couple of slides actually about reclaimed water. Reclaimed water is extremely unique. It's meant to be put to a beneficial use, open to the public. It would have been ideal if we could have used this on the golf course. That's right, next door really to the treatment plant. Anderson Perry actually looked at several other sites that where irrigation with reclaimed water could be used. The RCW, the law for reclaimed water specifically states, and this is unique to any other statute, it specifically states that the beneficial use of reclaimed water cannot impair any downstream water rights holders. The Walla Walla watershed basin is already over allocated. So when this opportunity came up, 2007 and 8, 9, 10, we were looking at this, our internal program with water resources, the Walla Walla watershed master. They categorically said, this isn't going to work. The city would have to put together a complicated water rights impairment analysis. But they said, we know the answer is going to be, you're going to impair people. And if you impair people, then you're going to get sued. Recent case law also has made these regulations tighter. So even though sometimes it used to be you could maybe mitigate for this in some way, but now it's a drop for drop mitigation. It's practically molecule per molecule. Until that case law gets decided by new regulation, that's just we can't do reclaimed water. And I'm really sorry about that because I am actually a reclaimed water engineer, and I feel it's my job to promote the wise use of our water. Start with conservation, recycle as much as you can use, reduce what you use for your water. Like I said, I feel passionately about this. I'm very sad that we couldn't go to this opportunity, but it is a very hard no from the internal programs at Ecology.
Thank you. Don't be afraid to write down if you've got any questions. Where does our wastewater go now? Correct.
The treated wastewater from the Dayton facility goes directly into the Tissue River.
Thank you. Any questions? Did you write them down? Oh, you have them right on?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tim. What's the
Okay.
question?
Cynthia, would you explain how many grants are available for the lowland application versus the irrigation system? Can you hear me if I just talk?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm like a dummy. It's like, oh, you got the mic.
So there's nothing written in stone, but typically a conventional land treatment system like we were talking about in 2017 could be funded with Department of Ecology State Revolving Fund loans and grants, and mostly loan and up to $5 million in grant, depending on the level of hardship, the community hardship. And that's based on the median household income of the city. There's other programs like USDA Rural Development that can also fund conventional treatment systems, and Public Works Trust Fund are the three pretty conventional options. If you're talking about an unconventional innovative project like the wetland, you give yourself more access to grants like from the Walla Walla 2050 group, who's working with the Water Trust Tribes and others, and Ecology. It's a large group to work on the Walla Walla watershed. grants from them, potential grants from Ecology's Office of Columbia River Program, potential grants from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. They have the Water Smart grant, Ducks Unlimited, Trout Unlimited. Ecology has a program called 319 Riparian Restoration. That's a grant program. So as you innovate and move away from conventional technology, you have access to a wider selection of unconventional funding.
Next question, what if we do nothing? What happens if we do nothing right now? And say, because it looks like, based upon what I just saw, we've got like till December. Oh, actually, it's this mic.
Oh, okay.
It's like, oh, no feedback. Okay, then I can use this mic. Basically, what happens if we do nothing?
So doing nothing will result ultimately in penalties and fines from the Department of Ecology, and potentially third-party citizen lawsuit. And the problem with those is that when you get to that point, then you lose your ability as a community to negotiate time and technology. So if you get sued by Waste Action Project, say, they take you to court, the schedule gets set, they don't care whether you need to borrow $12 million, $50 million, $10 million, if it costs the citizens $100 a month, $150. So you lose your ability to negotiate with the regulator because now it's a court decision. So it really does squeeze communities into, it backs them into a corner if it gets to that path. It's not a good option.
Is it safe to assume that the further back this thing gets pushed back, in construction costs and things like that would increase? I'm just guessing based upon time. Generally, things don't decrease in time, but you're the experts.
So one thing is that the implementation plan has a 10-year compliance schedule, and that 10 years was up on December 31st, 2021. So that 10 years is coming on. There's a series of criteria now that has been also in the letter that Ecology sent to the city, that the city can answer these 4 criteria, and then they can ask for an extension, time extension to that 10-year implementation plan. So that's still to be determined about whether that time frame can be extended, but it's not going to be another 10 years. It's going to be a shortened time frame. In addition, Ecology is working on a new wastewater discharge permit for the facility that'll also have a compliance schedule in it with timelines and deadlines that need to be met. So, and just in general, I mean, I think everybody is feeling how things are going up, food, gas, inflation is driving a lot of things, that all the money from new money that comes out. So Dayton used their construct or design money and then applied for construction money. It's all subject to the BIL, the infrastructure law. So all these projects are subject now to the Buy American, Build American requirements, which is escalating costs from as much as 30 to 50%. So it's not going to get cheaper.
Cynthia, this is another question. Do you, as part of your position, assist the city with grant applications, or is this directly on the city?
If the city wants me to write a grant application, I am more than happy to help them write a grant application. Yes, that's absolutely within my job scope.
Don't take this the wrong way, I love you.
Noted.
Totally professional. Totally professional. Zach, I believe this is for you. Given the council's rejection of the property purchase, what option is the council currently pursuing?
That is a very good question.
Oh, sorry.
So in the past, with previous council,
Closer.
the previous council was in support of this project. And as with all elected positions, new people come into these roles. I presented this to council in a special meeting on April 6th. At that time, we were still working on our due diligence portion of the project, and the
Zach, you gotta
conditional
lift
use
this mic.
permit had not been approved yet. At that April 6th meeting, council voted to table purchasing pending the results of the conditional use permit. That permit was approved, and at April 12th regular meeting, I represented the same resolution to purchase both Martin and Barker's property, and that motion was denied due to a majority vote of council. On April 27th, we had a council workshop. No action or decisions were made in the workshop. Council provided input on concerns and ideas to proceed, including renegotiating with Martin and Barker for a better price, looking at other potential properties, contacting AHBL, who is a planning firm that we contract with to see about their involvement. There was also looking at whether the rock pit that borders Martin's property could be extended, and exploring other options such as going back to a land use application. On May 10th, at our regular meeting, another resolution was presented. It was essentially the same. It was a renegotiated price with Martin and Barker for purchase of property with an approximate $100,000 less than the original asking price. That also was denied by council. And since then, we've been working internally on trying to answer a lot of these questions and concerns that council has brought forth. I've met with one other potential landowner, and we talked about what that looks like, whether we could enter into an agreement for purchase or for a long-term lease. We discussed both land use application and a low slope floodplain type project like we've been working on. I can't speak for council on what they are willing to support as a majority. And so that's why it's really important that we're having this meeting tonight, to get the public's input and for everybody to know that in order for us to continue moving forward, we have to know which direction the majority of council is willing to support. And we're kind of at somewhat of a standstill right now. We're absolutely looking at other options. We're still talking about it internally. We're still talking about it as a group with all these entities. But with the purchase of the Martin Barker property being denied twice by council, I don't know if those landowners would even consider a third attempt. And at this point, I need to know from my council as a majority what they're going to support and what they're not.
Thank you. I think this is kind of along the same things. If I understand this question correctly, why didn't past council vote to purchase 2 land parcels? I'm kind of confused on the dates on when this happened. Because somebody says I guess, could you answer that? Were the land parcels available for the past councils? Because I'm kind of confused on the timeline on when that happened.
Sure. So like I said, in the past, previous council was in support of moving forward with this project on these 2 pieces of property. With that, it was decided that it would be in the city's best interest to do as much due diligence as possible before purchasing the property. There's no point in purchasing 2 pieces of property for potentially $1 million if we can't use it for the project that we wanted to do. And so over the past 2+ years, the city has been working with all of these entities and our engineers and doing as much possible due diligence as we could. When it got to the point where we were at what we thought was 100% of answering all the questions and we knew that this property was going to work, is when I presented it to council for purchase.
Thank you. The next question is kind of a two-part. Businesses like wineries, food processors, straw processors, et cetera, will not be able to expand or locate here without a discharge permit. Is there another alternative for businesses while the city sorts this out? This is for anybody.
Well, first of all, the city, the current wastewater treatment plant is not at design capacity, so there's still room for businesses to come in and connect to the system. So I'm not sure if, what was the other part? I mean, right now, there's no moratorium or any kind of restriction on the city connecting businesses to the treatment plant. It's really just a matter of where you can put the water from May through October. It can't go to the river anymore. So the treatment plant is not anywhere close to capacity. It's designed, the original design of the treatment plant was for 750,000 gallons a day, and that was when Seneca was here. Currently, the treatment plant takes in about, correct me if I'm wrong, but about 300,000 gallons a day. Just shy of that, he says. So lots of room to grow still. It's just what comes out on the back end has to go somewhere else.
That was my question. Can I ask a follow-up then?
You certainly can.
Many businesses have to have a permit from the Department of Ecology. And I know of one business that already located in a different town because they were not going to be able to get that permit because of the condition of the plant. Because we haven't sorted this out. Is that mistake? Is that
Okay, so if you have, if you're an industrial, like a winery or something, that could be true. You may have to have a pre-treatment permit.
Could you repeat your question so we can hear?
Oh, she said some businesses have to have a permit from the Department of Ecology to discharge into a wastewater system, and that is true. And that this one business relocated to somewhere else because this wasn't getting sorted out. So maybe they were worried that, I mean, there's capacity, but you're right. So if there's a winery or some sort of a business that could cause pass-through interference or harm to the treatment plant, they would be required to have a separate Department of Ecology permit that would allow them to discharge into the wastewater treatment plant. And they would have to have some sort of a pre-treatment program to keep any kind of harmful, like winery waste and beer waste is very high strength and it provides a lot of upset to the treatment plant. So they would have to somehow mitigate that before the water went to the treatment plant. So you're correct. There could be a permit required from Ecology without getting into the weeds, not knowing what business it was. There's probably more than one reason for that.
One of our city council members suggested using tanks for storage and crop irrigation. Can you comment on that idea?
So I did talk to the gentleman that is the tank that sells these tanks. So they're fairly portable tanks that hold about close to 400,000 gallons. So I think what's important to understand is when you design a wastewater treatment plant, you have to have storage for 400,000 gallons of wastewater a day, not just one time. So depending on how much irrigation you were doing and how many days you were irrigating versus not, or, just a variety of things, you'd need quite a few tanks, like between 20 and 40. So they're about $400,000 a piece. A great idea. The guy was super nice. He's got a lot of best interest. Also, these tanks are not on Ecology's in their approved criteria for design of treatment plants, so they would have to go through this fairly involved process to try and get them approved by Ecology for use in a wastewater system. So I did talk with that gentleman at some length. We did discuss that. And that would be in lieu of a storage lagoon. So acreage wise, if you've got to have enough tanks to hold 300,000 gallons a day for 60 days, you're talking about fairly kind of apples to apples on acreage size, either lagoon or tanks.
How long will it take to build a new plant and start using new wetlands?
So design can take at a minimum a year, probably between 12 and 18 months if you started designing this wetlands option. Then the city would have to seek funding and go out for bid construction, probably another year. So probably 2 to 3 years to get it completed.
Is the Martin Barker property still available?
As far as I know, they are still available. Mr. Martin did post his property for sale on a realtor's website. I have not heard that that has been sold yet. I have also not heard that Pat Barker has sold his property yet. But I don't know if council is willing to keep pursuing those two pieces of property. Like I mentioned before, I presented this to council a couple times and it's been denied both times.
So for the Zoom people, you gotta really put that microphone up close to your mouth. They can't hear you unless you're swallowing the mic.
This one says, what can the public do to encourage movement on this issue? You asking me?
I think that it's really important for the public to reach out to your elected officials and for the public to be thoroughly involved in this, ask questions. I have readily available a ton of information on this project at City Hall. Anybody's more than welcome to come and take a look at it. We need to know what our council wants to do. The city and all these entities before you can't move forward with anything unless we know that when we go to present it to council, it's going to be something that they're in support of. The council has been very split on this. The first time it was presented, it was a 3-4 vote. The second time after the renegotiations were done, it was a 3-3 vote. Unfortunately, that was not something that I can break a tie on, but it's very important for myself, my staff, and all of these entities and the public to know where council wants us to move forward to and how to proceed, what they're going to be in support of as a majority vote.
Have you, Zach, contacted Ken Hansen about his operations, irrigating crops on on land that is under a long-term agreement or purchased?
So Ken Hansen is with C Efficiencies. They're the company that Cynthia just talked about that creates and sells these large containers that hold water. I have not been able to get a hold of Ken. I've tried numerous times to get a hold of him with no reply back. I know that he has spoke with council members, and I know that Cynthia, as she explained, has had very lengthy conversations with them. And Cynthia has also replied back to council members' questions about this via email, which I have all of that information in this folder too, if anybody would like to take a look at it. But like she explained, when you're talking about 300,000 gallons of water a day, it's going to take a lot of these above ground containers to hold that much water. Whether you're talking using it for land use or just for storage, it's a lot of water, and I'm more than willing to open to ideas and talking about different options. But from what Cynthia explained, this isn't necessarily something that I feel is the best way to move forward on, partially because of cost, partially because of size and the quantity, and a big portion is that it's not approved by ecology in the state of Washington.
Does the Department of Ecology have concerns with potential flooding of the proposed site?
There's a second part of the back.
Oops. Or of the river migrating or taking over the proposed wetlands?
The short answer is yes. And that has been many discussions within ecology, within the different programs, the shorelands program, part of the conditional use permit, easement. This is something that can be designed for. It can be designed on the size of the properties that were under discussion. And so, yes, there are concerns. Those concerns have been written and expressed and discussed. And it's something that can move forward. It can definitely move forward with this property. But I don't think the city wants to invest a lot more money in the engineering of this until that property is acquired, or another property, or a decision is made of what is going to be the plan for it. So this has been discussed a lot internally over the last 3 years.
I was going to say, if any of the panelists feel like any of these questions should be directed to Jake, let us know and we'll get him up there.
A letter to the editor mentions sewage amongst lily pads. How clean would the ponds be compared to the water that is currently being put in the river?
What would come out of the advanced treatment system that would be put in would probably be cleaner than what some people are drinking out of their own wells. I mean, it's highly treated, it's highly regulated. So, you know, it wouldn't even need to go into wetlands if the city didn't need to be out of the river, couldn't have a pipe in the river during the summer months. So the wetlands provide additional, even more treatment, but their primary purpose is to help to store water in low volume, so about a foot or less of water, and return that water back to the river through the ground. So once it comes out of the new treatment plant, it's treated to the standards that are safe. I mean, probably swim in it. I wouldn't, but so it'll be treated to a much higher standard than the current treatment plant is producing right now.
Are there grant opportunities for the new wastewater treatment plant along with the possible wetlands? Or is the WWTP going to be a loan of city money only?
So that's a calculation based on, like I said, a hardship calculation. Dayton does qualify for hardship funding right now. Ecology can offer, depending on the level, the burden to the ratepayers. So what ecology does is looks at the cost of the project and then looks at the impact to the ratepayers and then reduces the debt with grant money to lower the impact to the ratepayers. So there's that. It's kind of too bad in these next couple of years, there's going to be a boatload of money for construction with this bipartisan infrastructure law. A lot of forgivable principal. Ecology has more money than they can give out. So it's, the next couple of years are gonna be pretty good, so. So, you know, no guarantees in the grant world, but there are grant programs out there, and my job is to help look for free money.
I'm Ryan Mansell. Lucy, you indicated earlier on that the exchange or you can't impact the downstream water rights. The question is, how do the two alternatives in 17 and now 19 being open to the atmosphere? We know we have evaporation. How do those skirt the law compared to any other alternative?
You're asking why you can't use reclaimed water because that impairs, but you can take it out and use it for something else?
So we know the process of evaporation exists on every alternative that's been identified. So that is impacting the downstream molecule. There. So how do these other alternatives not? How do you get around that?
Thanks for clarifying. It's because the reclaimed water statute is where the drop for drop comes from. When you do these other alternatives, there's nothing in statute that talks about this drop for drop. And what's key about the wetlands proposal is the connectivity to the river. That's a huge goal in the overall watershed and in the Tushi in particular. But that drop for drop, that really impacts reclaimed water. And these other alternatives, it's not mentioned in statute. I didn't see was my answer would make sense, right?
No, that's good. No, that's a good one. It just doesn't apply. Yeah, your law is a different law. So, yeah. That was question one. Sorry. Next question. Zach, you kind of indicated, and I think the tribe did the study, identifying the properties that would be suitable for the proposed wetlands. Where is that map? What properties are there? And have you reached out to all those property owners identifying a potential for sale or lease? And there's a whole bunch of other questions, but.
So in short, yes, not necessarily in my time when I've been in my role. This has been a very, very long process. And when Washington Water Trust did their feasibility study and they put out a map showing the best potential sites, the city and Anderson Perry did reach out to those property owners that were on that feasibility study.
No, keep it going. Okay, so you indicated that pollutants are the main thing that we're trying to do. I believe you're indicating that the water is just wonderful, but it's a thermal load that we're trying to take care of with this.
So the study of the Walla Walla watershed identified specific pollutants. We have a slide on it. I don't know how quickly we can pull it up, but during the critical season, what happens is the dissolved oxygen levels drop dramatically. The fish can't live. The bugs that the fish eat can't live. And that's because of nutrients. And so specifically nitrogen and phosphorus and also temperature are the problem. Those are the problem pollutants. And that's what, typical secondary treatment technology can't meet those limits. That's why a wetlands proposal would provide nutrient uptake and it would cool the water through the ground. That's why everyone's so excited about the proposal. Hopefully that answers.
Sorry, guys. Okay, so this last one is kind of the money one. So how much is the current proposal going to cost estimate? And then the loan you guys were talking about that's potentially expiring, is that loan, you can reapply for that, a different loan? And how hard is it to get? And then the last question I had was, do you have to buy land or can you lease land?
You want me to talk about the cost?
Sure. Yeah.
Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Excuse me. So our last estimate, I think that we had was, and this is high level estimates at this point, my recollection is 10 to 15 million dollars is what we've been talking about. And, it was alluded to earlier, new regulations that you have to comply with to use those funds, and obviously in recent inflationary factors. So it wouldn't surprise me to see those numbers continue to go up.
I can't read the numbers.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to make him bigger and I.
Can you say them out loud?
Sure, so temperature is July through August, and it's 21.8 degrees Celsius, whatever that equates to in something Fahrenheit. 0.28 pounds per day for dissolved inorganic nitrogen, which is the sum of nitrate, nitrate, and ammonia. 0.20 pounds per day for organic nitrogen. 0.13 pounds per day for soluble reactive phosphorus, and 0.09 pounds per day for organic phosphorus. And that's May through October. So those levels are pretty low, and you just can't buy treatment technology right now that can treat to those levels. So Brooke Beeler asked, she wanted to add to Lucy's
Oh, I didn't see that.
answer about the water resource statute. Brooke says, if you have knowledge or experience in the water resource world that includes interpreting statute and case law, please come to work for us. Brooke is our Eastern Regional Office Ecology Regional Director. So, and she used to work in water resources, so she knows the challenges that it presents. Your question was about money. Just tell me again,
So the current loan's gonna expire or potentially expire. So how hard is it for the city to go get another one? Is that like almost? Just give me a feel for that. And then can you use that loan money to actually lease land instead of purchase land, or is it just for design or? That was kind of
okay. So his question is, this loan is coming up on its sunsetting at some point, and could the city reapply, or could, ecology, roll that over into a new loan potentially? Yes, that ecology is really supportive of Dayton's predicament, and so likely they could, they can't extend it, but they might be able to put it into a new loan agreement and, kind of get a redo. I doubt they probably wouldn't get as many years. We would probably get a 5-year term, but I'm sure ecology is pretty flexible about that. So if you're leasing land, ecology will pay for purchase of land. A lease agreement would be at the cost. The city would bear the cost of that.
Jeff, there's one on Zoom if you want.
Which treatment options does the local tribes, Blue Mountain Group, and other panelists prefer, and why?
Thank you. Yeah, I was feeling left out that there. As I mentioned earlier, the tribes really value the community here and making sure we do what's best for the community. And of course, the tribes also very much value the natural resources and trying to find that balance and doing what's right for the natural resources. I came to this 5 years ago, so I'm a newcomer compared to these folks. But I remember I grew up in a small community, smaller than Dayton actually, and I remember the challenges we faced in providing for infrastructure and services in that tiny community in southeastern Oregon. So when I learned of the city of Dayton's predicament here, I really took a personal interest, as well as representing the Confederated Tribes. That little community was in Southeast Oregon, and Oregon's done some really pioneering work on these wetland infiltration galleries, really using nature to perform these services that nature performs pretty well and pretty economically. And so I was really excited to hey, let's look at what they're doing down in Oregon. Maybe that applies here. And working with my colleagues up here to sort of pioneer that approach potentially. And I feel like just in the 5 years that I've been working on this for the Confederated Tribes, we've turned over every rock and every stone we could think of. And really, it's this wetland infiltration gallery that we keep coming back to and that all signs are pointing to. It'll, as Cynthia mentioned, it will really help with the water quality. It'll keep the water in the river ecosystem. It'll allow the water to return to the river cooler and cleaner, which is terrific for the fish and wildlife resources that are very important to the tribes. It's also very important to the downstream water users. That water goes back to the river. So certainly from the tribe's perspective, we're very excited about the wetland treatment option. It's also considerably less expensive, I think, than some of the other alternatives that were explored earlier on. So it's also exciting from that standpoint that it won't be an onerous burden on the community economically. And finally, talk is cheap, right? The tribes have financial resources that they're glad to bring to bear to look at this. And indeed, we have already. We've provided some funding for some analyses that have been done, and certainly are happy to contribute how we can with grant funding to the wetland treatment option. So that's a very long way of saying that the tribes are really excited about the wetland treatment option.
And I would echo similar for the Water Trust. I have even less years with this project, being with the Water Trust just about 4 years, in this project about 3 years. When I came and was sort of presented the project, the way it was talked about to me was kind of that the city was stuck between a rock and a hard place. They were trying to figure out this very expensive problem where there was interest in how do you keep the costs down and treat the water to meet water quality standards, and at the same time you're being told how do we keep that water in the river. And so that's not an easy problem to solve, and there was a lot of work already done when I got here and a lot of interest from the Water Trust in looking at you are not going to be the first and only community that faces this challenge. And so having a community that was open to innovative cost-effective ways to approach this challenge was something that Water Trust is really excited about. And like Anton said, we've brought some funding that the tribes help support us to be able to help do some of this analysis and potentially have some small amounts of grants that can help defray a little bit of that land purchase cost as well, trying to keep this as economical as possible.
So I just want to draw attention to the fact that, yes, there are concerns about the location, about the hydrology of the river, and things that would need to be mitigated in this design plan. But I think that some of the ways that these issues would be mitigated would add value to the conservation plan as a whole. And in addition to what these gentlemen mentioned, the previous mention about recreation opportunities, that's huge. And, native plantings and more habitat and putting islands out in the middle of these ponds that could be places where waterfowl could live and be a little protected from predators. And I think there's just, I don't think we can ignore the fact that there are concerns, but as Lucy has said, they can be mitigated. Or maybe it was something that said that.
I just put a picture up. So this is the Crooked River Wetlands Complex in Prineville, Oregon. So it's similar, it's much larger than the Dayton one, and it also doesn't have mechanical treatment. So it's got a settling pond, big settling pond, and then it goes out to a series of wetlands, but it is located directly along the Crooked River right next to it, provides, so that water returns to the Crooked River. In this complex, they have walking trails and bird watching and all kinds of stuff. It's, so if you get a chance, you might go online and look at some of the pictures of it. It just gives kind of an idea that they're low, so they're not big, you know, black plastic lagoons like the typical wastewater treatment lagoon. They're very low. They're designed to be low barrier and not you know, unsightful. So they're aesthetic. I just thought you might, because some people don't really know what they look like. Everyone has a different idea of what a wetland looks like, but on a very much smaller scale, it would be similar to Crooked River. Same design team, Anderson Perry. This project has won awards all over the nation for its innovation. So that's kind of where we're headed. That was the idea.
Being from ecology as a permit manager and applying regulations to folks under difficult circumstances, probably professionally, I'm not supposed to say anything other than I'm looking for something that's going to meet surface water quality standards, right? And that is part of the goal, but that this project has so many other aspects to it. You know, whatever property you're looking at, but all the other aspects of this property, wetlands proposal, has generated a lot of enthusiasm, and I think I have an org chart somewhere. We have talked about this proposal to many people within ecology because it's different. But the award-winning one, if you looked at the cost of what it was originally going to be for that community compared to what it ended up being, it's a huge difference. And Jake could speak to that if he has those numbers handy. I know it was a big difference because I've seen it presented at conferences years back now. So I will say that the multiple benefits here, I think, have generated a lot of enthusiasm. There have been legislative people involved in some of our monthly meetings. People are interested in this as an example for other small communities who are trying to meet these incredibly stringent standards. And what comes through the door, eventually I'm going to be the design review engineer. I happen to have a background in river restoration. I've done floodplain channel design. I've done riparian habitat. I've done this work before, and I know what looks like a good project. So we're not at that stage yet, but when it comes through my door, I'm going to be taking a hard look at how we're going to make this work and work with all these other folks, with all these other people here, and within ecology. So I hope we get to that point. People have been enthusiastic about it, so we'll see what happens from here now.
Yeah.
Right up there?
Right here.
Okay. If we pull our city water from 3 wells and draining and I guess are draining our aquifers faster than we can recharge them, as indicated in the Walla Walla 2050 watershed, why would we not be trying to recharge them so that we have sustainable clean water for our city? Clean water should be our #1 priority. Letting the water go back to the river does not recharge our aquifer, but supplement surface water, which in all other pretenses would be illegal.
Is it a question or a statement? Because I agree.
I think the question is the first part.
If we pull our city water from 3 wells and draining our aquifers faster than we can recharge them, as indicated in the Walla Walla 2050 watershed, why would we not be trying to recharge them so that we have sustainable clean water for our city? Okay.
The whole purpose of this project, this low slope floodplain project, is to help keep the water in our water system. If we move to a different idea, if we're using land use application, if we're looking at drain fields, any other project that is not putting our water back into the water table, not only hurts us, it hurts every community and landowner that has water rights downstream from us. I feel that the positives of this project way outweigh the negatives. This is, like I said, this is something that previous council has been in support of. This is very innovative, it's groundbreaking. It's not just gonna help our community, but it also opens the doors up for other communities in our state that are facing the same problems that we are.
Why can't the mayor break the tie?
So there are very strict rules for all elected officials and also for myself. While confiding in the city attorney, he explicitly told me about the RCW rules that I have to abide by. And when it comes to anything that has to do with money, I cannot break a tie on. And when it comes to purchasing property for this project, I cannot break the tie on it. It has to be a majority vote of the council members.
Hey, can I say something? I think there might be, sorry, may I speak?
Go ahead, Jake.
Sorry, I think there might be a little bit more to that question, the previous question about groundwater recharge that I think might be worth touching on. There are treatment systems that recharge the groundwater. And Lucy, you can probably speak to that better than I can, but there are systems that are treated to Class A. But in order to recharge the groundwater, you have to reach that level that is essentially a reuse system, which then is what Lucy and Cynthia were talking about earlier, which has the issues with the RCW, correct?
Yes.
That's correct, Jake. Hope you feel better soon, by the way.
When Cynthia made her presentation, she emphasized how much study had been done and listed a series of factors. She did not mention anything about high water events or river migration. Would you please address this?
I think Lucy just addressed that by saying that ecology, that had been well studied and well vetted within ecology. So, and you know, we spoke to the fact that there's not unlimited money. You could study this to death, but and never make a decision. But at some point, the city has to decide that it's good and that it's enough. They've done enough studies and done their due diligence that they can purchase the properties. And one of those things was looking at the floodplains, looking at the high water mark, and talking with the tribes, with Fish and Wildlife, with ecology shoreline programs. And then with the design engineer, and like Lucy said, yes, it's a concern, but we feel that there's the ability to mitigate for that.
DOE is the regulatory authority in this instance. It seems that DOE is unclear on a hard deadline for an improved water treatment process. This allows the project to drag on. Would DOE please comment on this?
So as things have been moving forward over the years, ecologists recognize that Dayton's been working hard on this, trying to find solutions to a very difficult problem. And so we've been, knowing that there has been forward progress being made, that there has not been a hard set time limit. There are milestones in the permit that state by December 31st of last year, something would be constructed. Now, because that date was outside the permit term, which was a 5-year term, that did not become, we're not going to come after Dayton for violations. However, I am in the process of writing a new permit. This permit has to include a new compliance schedule. We've also requested that the city make a formal extension And then ecology, my bosses and bosses, those are the folks who will make a determination from then on. They're well aware of what's happening. They're also well aware of recent council decisions and that, you know, they're online. They're know that we're here talking and trying to find out what the city of Dayton, how we wish to move forward. But a new permit is coming. A new compliance schedule is coming. Like I said, we're not in the business of writing a permit that's going to immediately put a town into violation, charge a bunch of fines that do the city no good. We're interested in finding a solution here.
Are the council members who voted this down, are they here tonight? And secondarily, if there are any current council members present or online who voted against pursuing, purchasing, and moving forward, would you please share your reasoning?
Yeah, I have to. I voted no, and I shared that in the press.
My name is Laura Ackerman. I'm a council member. I voted no. I have shared the reasons I voted no in our city council meetings on numerous occasions. I asked those questions. The mayor got some of those questions for us. Ecology got some of those questions answered. Not all of them have been answered, which also brought up more questions. This is a town hall meeting by the citizens. I'm a citizen here to listen to the information, and I am not here to discuss council business in this. I can't discuss council business in this forum.
I can clarify a little bit on that.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
So, thank you, Laura. And what Laura was saying is that this is not a city business meeting. This is not a city council meeting. Therefore, when you have members of council at a small rural community meeting like this, they are not supposed to gather together to create a quorum. They are also not supposed to discuss city business as a quorum. And so if council members tonight were to discuss city business, make any type of action or decisions, it would be outside of the rules and regulations that council has to proceed by. All council city business has to be done at an open public meeting during city council meetings.
What work assets did BMLT put into this plan? What impact has this problem had with the land trust?
Okay, so I think the question is asking, what does the land trust have? What involvement have we had? What have we put into this whole process? Well, when we were first approached with this concept, we immediately went into doing our due diligence. The conservation easement, which was legally entered into a binding agreement into perpetuity, which was an agreement between the funding source, Mr. Martin, and the land trust, is set and not negotiable. It's not modifiable. I know the question had come from a city council member, well, could we go ahead and quarry the rock? No, that's not inconsistent. That's inconsistent with the management plan, the stewardship plan that was agreed upon at the outset of the conservation easement. So what we had to do is evaluate whether this use would be consistent with our conservation values. And through a lot of discussion, legal consultation, our conservation committee made a field trip to the Martin property to analyze the situation. We did a lot of due diligence. So we have invested time. Time is money. When you're talking staff, we're talking volunteers coming out and doing that. So that's what we have invested at this time. What impact has this problem had with the land trust? I don't know that, other than, it's requiring our attention and our engagement on this issue. I don't know that I would say that it has impacted the land trust. Is there anybody down on the other end that could maybe think where that question is coming from that would, Anton, anything? Yeah, maybe I'm just not understanding the question.
What is the lifetime cost of the constructed wetlands versus land application? Lifetime meaning at a minimum of 20 years. They would know that because they're not at the design phase yet.
So throughout this project, we identified property that would potentially work. We have been working on doing as much due diligence as possible to make sure that this property could work. We are now at the portion of the project to purchase the property. After the property is purchased, then it goes into design phase, then it goes into construction. Without it going into design yet, we don't know exactly how much it would cost. And Jake might be able to add to that. Jake, all of you.
Jake, have anything to say?
Yes, here comes.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, we could certainly do a comparison, but it would be a very high level comparison from a cost perspective of, those two types of technologies. But again, it's a little bit theoretical because the properties, you have to make some significant assumptions because of, for the land treatment system, for example, we don't know where that would be. We would have to make an assumption in terms of where that might be located, for example. But it is possible to do a high level cost comparison.
As a result of this town hall meeting, will the mayor agree to put this issue on the next city council meeting?
I guess I don't understand the question. I've presented purchase of these two pieces of property numerous times, and I would have no hard feelings about reaching out to Martin and Barker again to see if they're still willing to sell. But until I know which direction the majority of council is wanting to support, I don't know how to proceed. Every item that goes before city council as city business has to be an agenda item. And so unless the question could be specified as a little bit clearer on how to present that as an agenda item, I can't say that I'm going to represent this again.
So I guess maybe when I hear that question, I start thinking, I don't know specifically what you need for an agenda item, but I think there's a lot of question here from people about what will the council support? I mean, you're asking it yourself. So can there be an agenda item that, just a discussion item for the council to kind of show what they're supporting or what they're thinking so those ideas can get out there? I mean, as somebody who has seen pieces of this through the work that I do, but not necessarily, you know, heard a lot about it within the community. I have some of those questions myself. What are the other options that the council wants to look at? And, you know, maybe a discussion item so that people can hear where council members are coming from would be a good idea.
I think that at this point, it's pretty simple that if the council wants to explore their options, they're gonna have to make a decision to decide to go back through the planning process again and, you know, spend another $100,000 exploring more options. So that's probably the decision that needs to be made, either moving forward with something that exists or going back to the planning, through the planning process again.
How much time is the Department of Ecology and Commerce willing to work with the city on extensions?
Well, we're certainly willing to work with Dayton for as long as it takes, but if it's a question of how long will the extension be, that I can't answer. That's a higher level question. I'm a worker bee. I'm an engineer. I write permits. That's going to be something that the city presents formally, and the decision gets made up above by my superiors. But we're here to work with Dayton as long as you know we want to get this done. But we need direction. Like Cynthia said, if we're going back to evaluating options, we're going back to planning. That's going to cost the city of Dayton. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
There was a mention at the last council meeting of concerns from the Conservation District. Have those concerns been addressed?
And maybe Jake could speak on this one a little better, but I believe that yes, all those concerns have been addressed.
Oh, are you talking, I guess I was thinking more from the land trust perspective than the conservation district perspective. The conservation, the land trust issued a memorandum, right, that established certain conditions and requirements.
Jake, I think that they're asking about concerns that the conservation district had submitted to us.
Oh, I see. Well, there have been a variety of questions that have been brought up. I think I've only had one conversation, maybe two, with the conservation district. So I couldn't honestly say if all of their concerns have been addressed or not at this moment.
Sure.
I came in here tonight and I said I hoped I listened a lot more than I spoke, and I still hope that remains true, but I could overhear Zach and Cynthia talking about how to address that. As far as the Columbia Conservation District is concerned, I'm a board member that have been for a long time. We as a board did submit some feedback in writing to city council, mayor, staff. And as a board member, I probably shouldn't speak for all five of us, but I'll speak for what we submitted in writing. The points we raised, I think, have validity. I don't know how much discussion has gone on within the city council or ecology to address those, but I will speak to the conservation district's role. We, as a district, are not a regulatory agency. We have no regulatory authority. And we really don't want any regulatory authority. Try saying that 15 times fast. We want to work with those in our district boundaries who own, utilize, manage the resources. We do have some technical resources. We have some experience working within the watersheds, working with the Toucan, working within the Tushy. We are very involved in river corridor projects. So I do think it's valid that we have the ability to chime in, give feedback. I think that's very appropriate. I was not at the council meeting where the conservation district comments were discussed. So I'm going to speak to what was in writing, and I'll repeat myself. I think the concerns we raised were valid, and I would stand behind those. And maybe they've been addressed and maybe they've been mitigated, and that's fine. But we are not regulatory. We don't want to be regulatory. But I do think we deserve a seat at the table for talking about projects like this because we are involved in it.
I just wanted to say that we absolutely want the conservation district at the table. We want everybody that can contribute to this project at the table. We need all the help we can get, and that includes, you know, one of your, I think, is Anisha, I think is the man district. Yep, and she's invited and she's been attending the monthly meetings, and we appreciate that. It's a huge time commitment for people. So absolutely want you guys at the table.
Is the second piece of property still an option? And if it
Is the second piece of property still an option? And is it true it's a better fit for the wetlands project? And is the mayor working with city council to look into the other piece? So I think what these questions are about is looking at other landowners as options. I have spoke with 2 other landowners that have property that could potentially be an option. One landowner is not in favor of it. The other landowner actually did entertain at least meeting with us and talking about their property potentially being an option. They had a lot of questions that we're working on trying to get answers to. We did talk about whether purchase was an option, whether a long-term lease would be an option. And we also spoke about whether it would be a floodplain type project or whether it would be a land use application type project. The property owner asked to remain anonymous. He was there also being represented with his leased farmer that farms that ground. And so we did talk in length about the different options as far as land use application goes. Like everybody's been told tonight, if we're talking land use application, it has to be for non-human consumption crops, which come with a lot of regulations and a lot of challenges and hurdles that we would have to overcome in order to go that route. In the meantime, we are still in conversation with that landowner. We're doing our best to try to answer some of the questions so that we can come back to the table and start working on some sort of negotiations to see if it is going to be an option and also whether it's going to be something that council is in support of.
What is the current condition of the existing wastewater treatment facility? And is wetlands the only option?
Hey, Ryan, you want to answer that?
They can't hear you on Zoom. You gotta have a.
That's all right.
Your story, sir.
So the current wastewater plant is within regulations of our current NPDES permit. So just to clarify, we're not putting raw sewage in the river. So it is very highly treated. It's the TMDL that we can't reach, which is the purpose of the wetlands. So we are still treating the wastewater very highly, just not to that extent that we will currently be held to, or we will be held to very shortly. But its current state is not good, to put it bluntly. A couple council members have gone and toured it. We're doing what we can to keep it going. But we are within our permit, our current permit, so we are still treating the wastewater the way it should be until our new permit is given to us, and then that's when we have high concerns.
Well, this looks like this is the last question. It says, we live on the river near Brian Martin's property. After the February 2020 event, we worked with 5 different agencies to restore as much as possible. Restore as much as possible. Hello? Okay, just checking. The consensus of the involved agencies was a problem upstream that contributed to the rapid erosion of our and Brian's property. Does part of your studies include work upstream? What input do the homeowners have? Thank you. Well, that's a mouthful.
Jake might be able to answer that question a little better than.
Jake, did you hear the question?
I heard some of it. So our efforts have been focused on that property and that location. We haven't done river studies upstream in that regard. There has been erosion and channel movement, and part of this project will include riparian improvements and other things within and around the stream to, try to minimize and redirect the stream to the extent possible back over to the other side of the channel. And there was another part, but I don't quite remember that.
What input do the homeowners have? I'm sorry. What input do the homeowners have?
Well, I think the normal process, there's lots of public comment opportunities, not only at council meetings, but there will be SEPA processes. There's a conditional use permit process that we went through where there was public comment. And then a conditional use permit hearing that was held where there was public comment presented. So, and I think there will be more of those opportunities as the project moves forward, regardless of what that might look like.
And it looks like I've got one, Zoom question. Will AHBL be involved moving forward after city council asks for that in a previous city council meeting?
So I spoke with Nicole Stickney, and she works for AHBL, who the city contracts for some of our planning services. She verified that they are a planning firm, not an engineering firm, and that they would be more than happy to be part of the planning process as far as the SEPAs and all the zoning and all of the shoreline requirements and the areas where they're the expertise on. They are not an engineering firm, and therefore they did not express interest in wanting to be part of the project at this time until we start moving into design and construction phase.
Okay, seeing that we don't have any other questions. Oops, excuse me. I spoke too soon.
This isn't really a question, but I really, really, really appreciate your time to come here and explain all the studies that have been done on the lowlands, the pluses and the minuses. I'm a new council member, so all that's gone on before, I really was not aware of. But to me, it's my opinion that since all the studies have been done on the lowlands, on how it would give back to the environment, all the win-win situations, all the grants and monies available to proceed with that. I just don't, in Montana would say that's chewing on a piece of gristle, you know? How much more do we have to chew on this to say it is the right way to go?
One of the things I'd like to do is please give me a hand for coming up here because quite obviously we wanted this information to give us information. And I like to think that this was a respectful interchange. It wasn't like such and such, neither, neither. We got to work together to get these things solved. I mean, we really do. I came into the city of Dayton. I came here to Dayton almost 20 years ago because my wife said, man, this town's got a great vibe. The people are great. We looked for 9 years for a place to live when I was in the military. We went to all over the country, Slidell, Louisiana, Illinois, parts of California. Cost, they're crazy. That's another story. But anyway, we went to a lot of places. And I think Dayton is worth at least exploring, looking at to see how we can come together to get these things done. Once again, give yourself a round of applause. Oops.
I concur with you, Jeff, and I really thank everybody for showing up tonight. This was an informational meeting, and I agree that it's not about pointing fingers at who did what or anything like that. We have a problem, we have to find a solution. And like I said, there's a ton of information and background and history for this. This file is readily available for anybody who wants to stop into City Hall and take a look at it. It's got the conditional use permit, it's got the SEPA, it's got appraisals, it's got meeting minutes. There's a ton of background and history, more than we could even discuss at length at a meeting in one night. And I do understand that it's a really tough decision for our council members. I appreciate their patience through all of this. I know it's a lot of background that they weren't involved with. It's a lot of exploring and asking questions, and we will continue to move forward, whether it's with this exact project or not. We still have a problem that we have to find a solution for. So thank you, everybody.
I think I'm going to hire you as my tech guy.